So if you are concerned about locking down access to take screenshots from phones connected to your Google Workspace account accessing your Google Drive, you can set up some restrictions in your Google Workspace account via policy. And I want to walk you through what options we have available. After placing sharing restrictions on my documents, I noticed that iPhone users can still take screenshots. Android users cannot. Please, I need to prevent iPhone users from taking screenshots. So let's go into our devices menu in our admin panel. We're going to open up mobile and we're going to go to settings and we'll first do Android. Now, Android has an application previously called Android for Work. I don't know if it's still called that, but effectively built into Google Workspace is the ability to not only control some of the Android settings on your devices, but it also lets you do the very cool thing where your team will have a separate bucket of applications completely separate to their personal apps. So they'll have a work version of their apps and a personal version of their apps kept nice and clean and separate, which makes things much tidier on their phone. And it also means that if they're trying to snap a photo for work, they're not going to accidentally snap and upload a personal photo into a business Google Drive. We don't want that. So in our mobile device settings in the admin panel is where we configure certain policies that we can apply to those. Now, you'll see that a number of these have a little purple flag. So you need to be on Business Plus for this to work if you've got those little flags there. But you can still set some basic settings that will work even if you're on a business standard plan. Okay, so you do have the ability to set screenshots on or off. And you can see here with this setting, I can choose to disable and disallow screen capture. And that means that anyone who is on a device within the associated organizational unit, they will be locked down and unable to take screenshots on their phone. Now, if you want to apply this only to a certain set of staff, you create a new organizational unit. You put those staff in that organizational unit using the user menu, and then you can apply policies to certain groups of staff by first clicking the organizational unit and then setting a policy which will apply just to that organizational unit. Now it says the word override here, which means I'm overriding the default policy for the parent organizational unit, and I'm applying this policy just to that child organizational unit. That's what the word override means. We're overriding the company-wide policy that sits at the top with a organizational unit level policy. And you can have multiple levels deep if you want to get really complicated with it. My advice is always to keep it simple. Now that covers Android. What about iOS? Let's go along to our iOS and see what options we have. Now, iOS has multiple options for managing phones. If you want to manage Android phones, Android for Work is the best way to do that right here inside your Google Workspace account. Even if you didn't have Google Workspace for your mailboxes and your Google Drive and everything else, if you want to manage Android phones, you would still use an identity account to set up a Google Workspace shell. You would verify your domain that you own it, and then you would onboard your Android devices to effectively a Google Workspace account without the Workspace bits. So you wouldn't have Drive, you wouldn't have Gmail, you wouldn't have Calendar, you would just have the Android devices, and then you would have the policies applied to those devices. Now, iOS is a little bit different because iOS has some basic functionality for mobile device management built into Google Workspace, but there's actually a broad range of APIs for iOS which are not included in Google Workspace by default. So there are third-party applications which will allow you to add additional policies to iOS devices and manage all of the APIs that Apple has provided for device managers. Now, they are called MDM applications or mobile device management. That's the category if you want to Google it and find some options. I haven't used them in about a decade, to be honest, so I don't have any personal recommendations right now, but I'll let you go and find some. And if you've got a recommendation, drop it down in the comments. Now, if we want to disable screenshots, you can allow screenshots and screen recording, or if you wish, disallow screenshots and screen recording to a certain number of people. Now, it says here, this option is only available when your mobile management is set to advanced. Now, what does that mean for your mobile management to be set to advanced? Well, remember I said that Apple uses advanced APIs to actually grant third-party tools access to those APIs and access to those policies. Well, there's something little extra that you need to set up for this to work out of the box because, well, it doesn't work out of the box. We need to set something up. Now, we need to register with Apple and actually get access to a mobile device management code, which will be added to our Google Workspace account. And then that authorizes us to use advanced features of mobile device management. Now, this is free and it's included in your plan. You just need to first go to this setting inside your devices, mobile and endpoints, universal settings, and then general settings, and switch mobile management to advanced. Now, you'll see here it requires a device policy app. You will need to deploy an additional app to your devices, which in this case will be a Google policy app. And Google's going to automatically prompt for that when users attempt to access the mobile phone and your policy has been enforced. It's a couple of extra steps for anyone to access the Google Workspace account when you turn this setting on. You do need to set up some connections to Apple. You need to then actually authorize devices to access things by installing a API. Every time you go to access that device and you want to log into the Google account, Google's going to say, well, you can't access the account unless you've got the API restrictions enabled. So here's a policy app. Please download the policy app before we give you access to your emails. Now, that's wonderful from a security standpoint, but your team are going to have to go through a couple of extra steps to actually get things set up before they can access their Gmail or their Google Drive.
If you need more help with what we've covered in this video, itGenius provides support services to businesses all over the world with problems just like this. Click the link below to get started.